So, what if we could turn social media into our secret weapon? Now, that's a question that brings up more questions. Like, why? Why do we need a secret weapon? Well, the main reason is that we have this huge gap between consumers and farmers. And in the developed world, the gap is very, very large. We have a scenario where many people are 2 or 3 generations removed from the farm. And so this is a communication gap. It's a generational gap in a way. It's also a geographic gap as more and more people live in cities. But most importantly, it's a gap of experience. You know, if you've never been on a farm really and spent any time on a farm, if you've never worked on a farm, then you're just not going to understand what goes into things. And when you don't have an understanding, then you are a sponge for information, good, bad, any type of information, because you don't have a base of knowledge. So what are we fighting for? Well, we're fighting for freedom. Like in any good fight, that's what you're fighting for, right? And we're fighting for the freedom for farmers and the agriculture industry to operate in a way that makes sense, in a way that's based on sound science and good animal management practices and good crop management practices. We don't want to run our businesses based on the whim of regulators or the press. And this doesn't mean that we want the freedom to do anything we want and to mistreat our animals. It doesn't mean that we want the freedom to damage the soil and the water. That doesn't do us any good. Then, you know, we're not sustainable. And that hurts us in the long run. And farmers are stewards of the land. But we don't want to be at the whim of other people who don't understand agriculture. And perception is reality. So if you don't have any real knowledge of agriculture and what a farm is like, and you see images on the internet of animals being mistreated, it's easy to believe those things. A picture tells 1,000 words, right? On the other hand, a lot of people that are not in agriculture have a perception of a very idyllic kind of farm with, 4 chickens and 1 duck and 1 pig. And that's not right either. So we really need these people to understand what agriculture really is and why it is that way. So what can we do about this gap? How can we bridge this gap? We want to bridge the gap with communication, but communication can mean a lot of things. It can't be more angry communication. We don't want to just be yelling back at the other side that's spreading misinformation, because then we're kind of down in the trenches fighting with them, and we just look bad, and that doesn't help anybody. And in fact, being defensive often kind of proves your opponent's story when they're saying something about you, and it's, you're telling the truth or they're telling the truth. People don't know what to believe. If you're immediately defensive, then it weakens your case. Do we want it to be all about education? Well, certainly we want to come up with good, accurate information that we can provide to people, and we want that to be available to them, but we can't go about bridging this gap just by trying to shove messages down people's throats. If they're not ready, if they're not searching and trying to learn about agriculture, and we're just pelting them with messages, then that'll raise their defenses. And they'll see it as kind of an industry information campaign. So we have to be transparent. We have to share our story about what we do, and that's part of it. That's a good foundation for it. We also can't drown out the other side. There are lots of negative messages out there, And we don't want to just be trying to outnumber those negative messages. For one thing, it's not possible. And for another thing, we'll just fatigue our audience. When you get to a point, you're hearing so many things from all sides, you don't know what to believe anymore. You just run out of patience and you assume that probably everybody is lying to you. And we don't want to put consumers in that situation. So we need better communication, and it needs to have kind of a one-on-one aspect. It needs to have an experience aspect, because that's how you really learn, with a hands-on experience and by talking to friends and by word-of-mouth communication and really building relationships. So social media is really all about friends. All of the social media networks that have ever been built, for the most part, are about friends being able to share photos or videos with their friends, sharing status updates about whatever silly thing that they're doing, inviting friends to go to a restaurant or to come over for a birthday party, just sharing with friends. Corporations and industries spend a lot of time thinking about how they can approach that audience and take advantage of that audience being there, but that audience is not there to be educated or to absorb information. They're there to interact with their friends. And we need to make some friends. So it's really the ideal place for us. But how can we communicate if we have a positive message about feeding the world and taking care of your family? How do we communicate, or how do we compete with the alternative message, which is that agriculture is doing all these horrible things and people are abusing animals? Well, there are always going to be people that are drawn to those very negative messages, and there's no shortage of those negative messages. I mean, you can find conspiracy theories about anything you want. But at some point, I believe that most people grow tired of that negative messaging, and they just feel, I don't want to hear any more of this. They turn it off. So if you're communicating by building real relationships and it's based on experience, that's a much stronger form of communication than pelting people with negative, bad news. And I think that it's much stronger in the long run. So social media is our secret weapon. It can be if we use it right. So I would like everybody here to consider telling their farm story via social media. But the first way that you have to start is by listening to what other people are saying. You don't want to go out and just get going and posting stuff right away. You kind of have to get a feel for the networks that you're on and how people talk on those networks. So a really good way to get started is to find a Facebook group of farmers and see, what do they talk about with each other? What sorts of things do they post? So this Facebook group is called I Am Agriculture Proud. And it's a group for bloggers to post their blog posts to share with each other. And there are plenty of non-agriculture people that read that as well. So that's really a great way to get used to what sort of comments you might see and what people are saying and what they're concerned with. So even before you're comfortable posting anything, that's a good start. You can also follow bloggers that have built up some experience talking to people. And this is Derry Carey. Many of you are probably familiar with Derry Carey, and she's actually sitting right over there somewhere. She just waved. And this picture is from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. So Derry Carey's blog has gotten to the point where she started to get into mainstream press, and get exposure for her stories about agriculture. And, you know, she's not trying to spin anything. She's one of the most honest people that I've ever seen. And every day she has to deal with activists or critics, and she's always just very honest with them. She just tells them exactly what they do on the farm and why they do it. And I think that's very refreshing. There's not any PR about it. You know, she's happy to just get down in the trenches, say it like it is, and realize that not everybody is going to, you know, accept that, and not everybody is going to be won over, but she's telling the truth about agriculture. And she, this year, won Social Media Farmer of the Year from Ag Chat Foundation. So congratulations, Carrie. We also have another very experienced blogger with us, Ryan Goodman. And Ryan just posted his 1,000th blog post recently, which is quite an accomplishment. I think he started in 2009, and that's really amazing to think, you know, that you could write on average 5 blog posts a week, all very well thought out. And it's gotten him the kind of exposure that's allowed him to be a guest blogger on Eatocracy, which is CNN's food blog. So he's reaching lots and lots of people that read mainstream media and gone way beyond just talking to other farmers. And he's just telling them very factually, this is why we do what we do. And it starts to build an understanding, and it fills that gap. So people know why something is happening, and they're not such a sponge for misinformation. You can also tell your farm story in a very humorous way, and this is Derek Klingenberg, who has done a lot of very funny YouTube videos. You can find a lot of other good farm parody videos on YouTube. If you're more drawn to shooting a video and singing a little bit, and you would rather do that than write a blog, then that's a good way to go too. So after you've listened to some of the other people that are telling the story of farming, where do you start? There's so many different platforms. There's so many, so many ways to share your message. So I think the most important thing is to spend that time listening, pick the platform that you like, and just start out with it and see where it goes. There's an organization called the Ag Chat Foundation that has lots of great resources that can tell you how to get started on Twitter or Facebook or any of the social media platforms. It's at agchat.org. Yes. And they also have an annual conference in the United States every year, which is a 2-day workshop for farmers to go and learn social media. And we sponsor that conference, and a couple of years ago, we ran a blogging contest to pay for a scholarship for the Ag Chat conference. And Derry Carey was one of the people that submitted a blog post, and it was her first blog post. And she didn't win, but it was a great blog post. So you get started, you're on social media, and you've made some new friends. You've kind of met some people online. But that's not where it stops, you know. You need to make the relationships real. So why not invite some people over? There's nothing better than getting people out to the farm to see what you do, so that when they see a YouTube video of horribly dirty animals or mistreated animals, they know that I've been to a farm and that is not what I saw there. And this is Cheney's Dairy Barn, which is a dairy farm in western Kentucky, and they decided that they wanted to make their own ice cream. So Carl Cheney went and learned how to make ice cream. He went to school for a couple of weeks, and they built their ice cream parlor and they have school groups come and they tour the farm and they get to see how the cows are milked. And then in the summertime, they have ice cream and a movie, and they project movies up on the side of the barn, and the kids run around and play. And it's a great experience for the whole family. And so people that are near his farm have that solid experience of agriculture, so they know what his farm is all about. If they see a YouTube video of some cows being mistreated, they at least know that that's not on every farm. Even if they're upset to see that video, just as we would be, they know that that's not what always happens. So when PETA or HSUS tells them industrial farming is all about this, these people are abusing animals, they know that that is not the case. So why not create your own amusement park? There's a farm in Fair Oaks, Indiana, called Fair Oaks Farm, and they've turned their 30 square mile dairy farm into an amusement park, and it's amazing. They have 30,000 cows, so this is not like a little tiny demonstration farm. This is a big farm, and groups of kids can go there every day. Families stop by. It's right off the interstate. They have big billboards that tell you can go there. They have a restaurant. They make cheese. They make ice cream. And they have biosecure sealed buses that take the tour groups through the farm, so they don't have to worry about endangering any of their cows. And you can take your kids there, and they can see a calf being born any day because they have so many cows. When you go there, you would never even, it doesn't smell like you would have 30,000 cows there. You would be very surprised because they take all the manure, they run it through a methane digester, and they're creating lots and lots of renewable energy with that. They're selling electricity back to the grid. So it's a really great story about sustainability. It would be really hard to turn that story around and make it an anti-agriculture story. And thousands of people each year experience that place. And so they have a good, solid understanding of what that farm is about. So they're getting you to come there to have an experience with your family that most people don't get to have anymore. We people that live in the city that aren't on the farm, you can go to the park, you can go to the state parks, you can hike, you can do lots of things, but you don't always have an opportunity to just go goof around on a farm. And that's a really nice thing to do. So, if you're able to bring your kids and go through the corn maze, that's something that they're going to remember. And then they also let you know that you can come and really learn about how the food is produced. So that fills a need too, because people want to know how their food is produced more and more. And it's obvious, all the food is fresh. It's made right there on the farm. They have a big Halloween festival each year. So if you're in Indiana and you've been to Fair Oaks Farm, who are you going to trust? Farmers and agriculture, or are you going to trust activists that are posting things on YouTube? I would say that you would have a good experience with agriculture and you would be very pro-agriculture. On the other hand, if you're in a state that is starting to ban, that is trying to ban people from videotaping on farms, that is trying to keep the media out of farms, then that is a perfect place. If I was running an activist organization, I would go to every state that had an ag-gag law, and that's where I would set up shop. Because once you tell people you cannot come in and see my farm, well, you've lost. It's so obvious that you're up to something wrong, if you're hiding behind a law. Now, it's a complicated issue. there are reasons why you don't want people videotaping for a month and not turning the information over to the authorities if they see animal abuse, and I understand that's the other side of that issue. But we can't be seen to be hiding behind the law. We need to be transparent and open. There's nothing wrong with farming and raising food, and let's not act like there is. So perception is reality, and the perception should be that agriculture is our first industry. It's really our first science that we developed as a civilization. And it's our most important industry. It may be the only industry we have that's actually life and death, feeding the world. So that's the perception that we want people to have. Not that we are a polluting, abusive industry that needs to be saddled with lots and lots of regulations because we can't be trusted. So, what do you guys need to do? So if 2% of the people in a lot of the developed countries are farmers, that means that out of 100 people, only 2 are farmers. So that leaves 98 non-farmers. And if you divide that by those 2 farmers, that just means that everybody in agriculture just needs to make 49 friends. That's not that many, right? You don't have to write 1,000 blog posts to make 49 friends. I mean, you can do that with a cookout. So I want you to think seriously about how you can get involved with social media and make your 49 friends and create and put an end to some of this gap that we have. So I'm going to leave you with some homework. So I want you to write down 49 friends. That's your goal. No, I'm serious. Write it down, 49 friends. I know if Dr. Lyons asked you to write down 49 friends, you would write that down. And then pick your method for making those friends. And don't write down all these possible ways to make those friends. Write down one thing. Just pick one thing that you want to do. So you could share your stories on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or YouTube, whatever you're most comfortable with. You can invite a school group to tour your farm. You could start a blog. You could start an annual harvest festival and have tours. You could open a farm shop. And then you can also send your best cow photo to cows@alltech.com and help us share those. And we're going to run a campaign on the hashtag Global Cow. And I think that'll be a lot of fun. So I just want to say thanks for listening. I know it's lunchtime, and I'm going to leave you with a quick video by Derek Klingenberg that you may or may not have seen. The actual video is 4 minutes long, but we've done a little magic to it so that it's real quick.
Thank you.